Welcome to a call with Shutter and friends today. My name is Tatu. I will be your host today, and we are going to be discussing what if your chain was more neutral than Switzerland. Today, joining us will be me and other people from Brainbot contributing to Shutter. We have Philippe from Gnosis. We have Ralph and Aaron, I think, from OLAS Isotropic. You can do your introduction soon, and Mark from Nethermind. So, without further ado, how about a quick round of introductions? Let's start with you, Luis.
Hey guys, I'm Luis, product manager at Brainbot for Shadow Network. Yeah, excited to share some cool new updates. Definitely it's sort of like heads down building time, but I think there is some cool new updates from within the Shutter DAO ecosystem and also with Gnosis Chain as well, Shutter's Gnosis Chain.
Awesome. My name is Adam. I'm CEO at Isotropic Solutions. My background is in software development and entrepreneurship. I've been heavily focused on blockchain and then blockchain and AI intersection for the last 2 years. And this summer, my company, which provides AI, cloud, and cybersecurity services to banks, manufacturers, and other companies internationally, has made the decision to get involved in this space as well. And we're starting to do work with Shutter and OLAS to help provide trading strategies that are implemented into autonomous AI agents so that MEV encryption strategies can be validated and tested.
Not sure who's next, but I'll jump in here. My name is Ralph Paulmeyer. I'm head of BD at Valerie. Valerie is a company that's building frameworks for the co-ownership of AI, starting with autonomous agents. And we are core contributors to OLAS. OLAS is the main project bringing autonomous AI agents to the crypto space. Excited to be here, and extremely excited about what's being built alongside Shutter, Nethermind, with development support from Isotropic.
Hi, I'm Philip. I'm head of infrastructure at Gnosis, which means basically everything technically related to the chain. Yeah, that's it.
Hi, I'm Mark. I work as an Ethereum core developer at Nethermind, and I've been working on implementing Shutter in the Nethermind client, which we're excited to release soon.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. And as mentioned today, we're going to be discussing autonomous AI-driven agents, base layer neutrality, and all this cool stuff happening on Gnosis Chain. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Luis for a quick update on what's happening with Shutter and Gnosis Chain and such.
Thank you. Let me just share some general updates. How can I share my screen? Oh wait, just yeah. So in general, I think as I said before, the encrypted mempool for Gnosis Chain is slowly but surely maturing, both in terms of the ability, the validator amount. So just onboard another big validator, Kleros, and also on the Explorer side, where the Explorer gets better and better, but more on that later. Another thing that happened within the last week or two is we got together and did a little mini project, which we call Nano Shutter, which is a version of Shutter, sort of a minimal version of Shutter, specifically for sounds. So we noticed that Shutter was always designed to be this sort of generalized encryption and commit reveal gadget for multiple use cases. but we didn't make it extremely easy to use it, but rather we focus on doing the integrations, namely especially the snapshot and the Gnosis Chain integration. So this is a step in the direction of making it a lot easier for anyone to build on top. So how this works is it is a extremely dumb version of Shutter, which is sort of fully centralized and essentially just provides encryption decryption keys. But it is very simple to use, right? It has only these sort of 4 API endpoints to encrypt and then decrypt, either time-based or using a custom epoch. And it allows people to very easily build these simple kind of commit reveal apps on top. Here's an example that we built as a terrorized rock, paper, scissors. You see submit move, and then player 2 submits, and then boom, decrypted, and that's how it works. And it's designed to help familiarize developers with the general concept and prototype some applications, then hopefully move to using the real Shutter. And in parallel, we also hopefully this informs also Shutter, the real Shutter sort of, in how to make it more generalizable. And we utilize this, or we pushed this for the East San Francisco and the East Sofia hackathons. And we had a number of teams hacking on it. One successful grant application here was the Stealth Bid project, which essentially is a task allocation and job sort of job or task allocation tool for DAOs using using Nano Shutter, right, and using this commit reveal scheme in order to make the negotiation process between the applicant and the DAO be information symmetric, right, and make this be a smoother and more sophisticated experience, I would say. So it's awesome that it works. People are building on top of it. So that's Nano Shutter. We'll hear more about the OLAS and isotropic integration later. That's sort of, I would say, in full swing. Isotropic is doing a lot of work to work on this. We also have a vote from a proposal from Spence, one of our core, let's say, DAO members, and to do the first sort of official keeper set vote for Shadow DAO 0x36, and that is the process of selecting keepers, and that's kind of the core purpose of the DAO, right? There is actually already a keeper set on chain, on the Ethereum main chain, written into it. But that is just sort of inherited from the precursor to the Shutter DAO. So this is really the first kind of official extension, I would say, of the keeper set. And there is a deadline until the 3rd of November for people to submit. We have many submissions here in the keeper applications. So some of these are confirmed already, and some of these are new applications. And then the DAO will select, we do a snapshot vote to select, and then a decent vote to write the result of keepers on chain. And from there on, it can then be kind of utilized. And then I'll just briefly highlight the sort of DevCon presence, or Shutter DAOs and Shutter ecosystems DevCon presence. Especially very recently, the DAO made a snapshot to select between privacy-focused events to sponsor them, essentially, and it ended up sponsoring, I would say, the biggest and most key privacy-focused side event at DevCon called Cypherpunk Congress by Web3 Privacy Now. Chose to sponsor it with the bigger package they had in mind. So that'll be including a speaking slot and a booth and multiple things. So we'll definitely have a cool presence at the Cypherpunk Congress, I think on November 11th in Bangkok. There's also a side event organized by some DAO members of Shadow DAO 0x36 itself, especially JLH. And that'll be called the Elephants of crypto, and it'll be with Kleros, eStorage, Shutter, JLH, and some others. Yeah, just a chill, cool evening of meetup. So recommend everyone. I think that's going to be on the 13th, November 13th. So unfortunately overlapping with the Agents Unleashed event, but I mean, it's a long. People can go to both, right? So yeah, I think that's it in terms of. Oh yeah, one thing to highlight. I mean, it's not our event, but definitely something for people to listen to, and that will be very interesting. Is generally the Dev Conflict event, right, from Gnosis. But one debate in there is about application layer MEV protection, or generally speaking, kind of how to deal with MEV either on the application layer versus the protocol layer. So it's a debate, um, this debate format, right? And it's going to be Felix from CowSwap versus I think Thomas from Nethermind. But I think that's very interesting if you're interested in things like Shutter and MEV protection, because I think both both of these topics have strong for and against arguments. So I think it's going to be a very interesting debate. So I think Dev Conflict event is before the conference, the couple of days before the conference. So I recommend everyone to check that out, and especially that debate. I think that's it in general for general updates. And then I guess is Fred here? Yeah. I'm not sure. Fred, do you have some updates, or should I? Maybe I can go. Maybe I can give some general updates, and Fred, if you have more, then jump in. So yeah, I said sort of the Explorer is progressing. Let me just share my screen here. Yeah, if you haven't seen it, recommend to check it out. And now we have this slot overview is becoming better, showing more of the epochs, and I think it's just a fun game to watch it, and especially again sort of the amount of validators, because we're sort of nearing the full official integration of Shutter into the Nethermind branch, and we just onboarded Kleros as the third beta, I would say early kind of validator group, and they have a big holding. So I think that that'll has the potential to increase the validator amount before we then go into the full mode of, well, now it's stable enough and it's safe enough for everyone for all validators to join. So yeah, looking forward to the Nethermind kind of official integration. So yeah, that's from my side for Gnosis Chain. But Fred, do you have other things to add, or anyone else here from the group?
Yeah, I can say, sorry, I was joining a little bit late, so please interrupt me if I'm saying information you already know. But yeah, so on the Explorer side, we really like focusing, polishing the Explorer and focusing on like giving user more insights on when they can expect their transaction to be included. So yeah, we have this nice slot progression overview. We have a transaction detail page where users can watch, like in a Etherscan style, how their transaction is getting included. Yeah, and on the Nethermind side, we are finalizing like last things for this official release, which is super exciting. So we're very close to onboard then more validators and increasing the user experience. Here we are working on better UX for validators to join the system currently.
Oh, great. Thanks for the updates, Louis and Fred. So getting to the topic of autonomous agents. So uh, Isotropic is now working on getting the AI agents to run and test the MEV tactics and strategies on Gnosis Chain. So why don't you give us a brief introduction on what happened with the Shadow 0x36, the grant you got, and what's happening now with the whole thing?
Sure, absolutely. So the grant was made available via request for proposal from Shutter, and the general ask was to be able to provide AI agents that trade on chain autonomously, generally behaving like a human or having some variability and unexpected trading behavior occurring to simulate an environment where there's a lot of transactions happening, at least for now on Gnosis Chain. And then to be able to run those autonomous trades against both an unencrypted mempool and a Shutter encrypted mempool to start to evaluate and measure the impact of those encrypted mempools. So that'll be provided in a bit of a dashboard so that operators of these AI agents and testers of the simulated environment can compare and contrast how the trades are affected or not affected, whether they're going through that encrypted mempool or a non-encrypted mempool. So that's kind of what we're doing is building out that system, the simulated environment, autonomous agents, and the dashboard to enable that level of simulation and testing. Right now, the developers are working through some of the first stages of that project. If we think of it generally speaking, so what Isotropic Solutions does is it works with other technology stacks and then works with clients to provide custom solutions utilizing those technology stacks. So in many cases, our clients are banks or manufacturers, and in this case, not exactly a client, but basically our client is Shuttered and kind of answering to that RFP. So our team has gone through the OLAS technology, the Shutter technology, and has established our basic development environment and to prepare to deploy these agents into initially a testnet environment. So we're right now making that transition from setting up that basic framework for our developers to do their work, and now starting to get into coding the actual scripts that will run these agents and run these swaps and collect the data that will then eventually populate the dashboard. So we're kind of in that transition from initial setup into the customized development.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. I would like to see, as you know, running autonomous AI agents is still rather new. Philip and Mark, you both on the infrastructure side. What does this, before we go and Louis and Fred can talk about what this means for Shutter, but what does this mean for Gnosis Chain and Nethermind? Are there things that you are affected or it's something you should consider, and how do you feel about this testing and research?
Yeah, I guess Mark, go ahead. You're a bit closer to the actual thing.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine in future a lot of the stuff we're currently building is going to be largely agnostic. It's going to be used both by people and autonomous agents. So we need to be preparing for that future.
And then for Louis, Fred, what does this mean for Shutter?
Yeah, maybe we said this in the past, motivated sort of why this is interesting, but maybe just let me iterate again. And so I think the idea here is that it is extremely hard to simulate and model the economic viability of let's say things like this, right? Let's say an MEV protection mechanism that has multiple dynamic kind of systems, and people change their behavior based on how their trades are going through, right? So it's not a thing that you can just model. So we did that in the past, right? We just kind of simply modeled it, where we just had kind of a simple model of an AMM and had kind of and had scripts to simulate just randomized trades and have kind of aggregate up how trading performance and user loss would be affected. We have a blog post on this. Yannick built this really cool script. However, it really hit sort of a wall there because again, it's not a dynamic kind of model, and it just it's extremely dependent on the assumptions they put into it, and you can kind of just prove everything if you want to do it this way, right? So So and then that paired with the fact that there isn't a lot of MEV on Gnosis Chain, that made the demand for a dynamic sort of test bed and simulation environment for the encrypted mempool. They created the demand for that, right? And I mean, I guess people would traditionally use things like cat, right, where you can also, that's a specialized system to simulate economic systems like this, and I think crypto people have used it in the past. But we thought the autonomous agent space and the kind of recent, really, I would say, even explosion of autonomous agent kind of frameworks and things of that nature made it for us made a cool occasion for us to or and all included kind of participants to utilize the OLAS autonomous agent framework in this way, and kind of to provide a as close to real world level kind of simulation environment, which is happening actually in the real world. It's happening on Gnosis Chain, even if it's like low stakes maybe and low fees. Thanks to low fees, it is a real world testing and simulation environment. I always loved this. I always loved the idea of Kusama, right, which was this kind of chaotic sister network to Polkadot, which was that idea, right, to have a real world yet low stakes, not a test net, right? It's a real world net, but it's just low stakes, and it allows really for experimentation and allows for simulation of things like this. So I think that's the perfect that's the analogy here. And so yeah, we're hoping to gather insights for Shutter, whether the encrypted mempool is economically viable or not. Whether so that's kind of the main thing, right? But beyond this, super excited also about this general concept of being used beyond Shutter, right? So in this past blog post that I talked about, we simulated, I think, 6 or 7 different transaction ordering strategies, right? You can do FIFO, you can do other things, backrunning for block, backrunning for transaction, yada yada. So I feel like this works for Shutter, definitely other MEV or sequencing or transaction ordering projects or just researchers also in the space should get very interested and should maybe get an interest to also test their systems in such a way, right? And use the autonomous agent, use basically this zoo of as human-like possible trading agents as possible to test out their transaction ordering strategies or MEV protection or MEV kind of distribution or whatever mechanisms, right? As a next step, and then even that's something you brought up as well, Adam, on our last call on the OLAS currents Twitter space. I'm also super excited for the eventually even sort of like a real world traditional finance applicability of this, because they sort of have the same issue, right? And they have large economic systems, especially I would say banks, in concert with central banks, in concert with I don't know hedge funds, and in concert with them giving out mortgages, and they do stress testing, right? They need to regulatorily, but the regulator requires them to do stress testing, and they probably do also on their own for their own business. And again, I think the autonomous agent have the possibility to really revolutionize that field of stress testing, even in crypto, but also maybe even for the real world. So hopefully also maybe we can set an example here, and that a traditional banking system can look at this and maybe even get inspired by it.
I agree, and it is interesting. We work with a couple of the banks that we work with, and one of the central banks that we work with have both reached out to us. I would say inquisitively and with curiosity, with questions related to blockchain and crypto. So it appears to me that they are working on getting themselves up to speed and collecting information so they can try to map out what their perspective on blockchain and crypto are. And as you can imagine, they're not yet where they're saying, "Hey, we want to do this. Can you do this for us?" But they're calling us and asking for insights and information. So this particular project is really helpful for us because it's the first time that our company has gotten to dive deep into some of these concepts and technologies. Each of us as individuals have, and I have extensively, but to have our team do it together on a hands-on project expedites our kind of shared understanding of what we can do and what might be useful for different types of financial institutions. It's a really interesting moment to be involved in a project like this, talking to these financial institutions on one hand, and then exploring and experimenting with the cutting edge technology on the other. So we're hoping to be that bridge for them, so they continue to call us when they have those questions.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's super exciting, yeah, to have, and that because currently I think enterprise interest, I would say, in blockchain is maybe not at the all-time high to be frank, but that's one of these things that maybe has the potential to reignite that a little bit and to have real world applicability, and yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. Because in general, autonomous agents and AI is actually really hard in the real world, I would say, right? Because the real world systems are especially designed to prevent exactly that, right? So you'll have kind of the entire modern internet and modern banking system is designed in a way to prevent bots, right? And crypto is designed from the bottom up to acknowledge the fact that anyone can be a bot or a human, right? Just like it's basically natively sort of built for autonomous agents. So I think mainstream will slowly start to realize that, and then um, and then I think this is one of these cases where it could actually be that's actually one of the, let's say, one of the areas where again really like traditional finance could really be interested in this, because nowhere else will they be able to find an environment where they can have a real world of money with real money, right, on something like Gnosis Chain environment where autonomous agents can freely do whatever they want. So they would be hard pressed to find that in the real world, because then there would be all kinds of barriers and hurdles. So yeah, super excited about that potential, even like far beyond Shutter, more like for, I would say it's more for kind of crypto mainstream relevance in general.
It does seem like it's all headed one direction, and that's towards adoption. I won't necessarily say universal adoption. There's going to be private, public, and some that just stay outside of it, but there's going to be significant adoptions. Recently, this week, the U.S. Treasury released a deck, and in that deck is like 130 pages, and about the last 25 pages were about blockchain and digital assets, and specifically coming from the U.S. Treasury Department, that is them thinking about how to protect their treasury, right? So they're trying to say, how can we not, lose out, and how can we make sure that we don't get negatively impacted? And kind of the basic things that they're saying in there are this stablecoin thing and these digital ledgers, and this type of environment is very small, but it's growing very fast, and it's going to be very big. And we need to start looking at this very assertively before it gets really big, because right now it cannot destabilize our treasury, but pretty soon it can destabilize our treasury. So that to me is an indicator that they are seeing it as going one direction, and that's growing and earning more adoption. And then I have to assume that a lot of the other financial institutions, whether that's regulatory bodies from other governments or from the private sector, are thinking along those lines. I would have to assume that they're somewhat in alignment with how the Treasury Department is thinking. So if that's the case, then yeah, we're probably, I shouldn't say probably, maybe in my mind it is probably on the front end of all of these institutions, slowly but surely starting to wake up to the what's definitely happening, the same way that all of us have gotten to just a little bit earlier with a little bit higher risk tolerance. But it does seem like everything's going one direction. And I suspect that I and all of you on this call are going to continue to get more calls throughout the next year or two.
Yeah, exciting times.
Yeah,
So maybe
yeah.
switching gears, maybe. So because we want to also maybe involve more Philippe and Mark, maybe it would be interesting to. I mean, either you guys have more other topics, but maybe one topic that would be interesting to discuss here is that would be, yeah, if you have opinions on that dev conflict debate about application layer MEV protection versus protocol layer MEV protection. Like, I think it would be interesting to already pre-discuss this and inform the discussion as well. That's ahead.
So, in my opinion, I think both are important. So we can design applications better so that they leak less MEV. But I think that there's also there's always going to be some like poorly designed applications or some cases where you can't really do this, where like protocol level solutions are needed. And yeah, so I mean that's only one benefit as well of encrypted mempools. So there's the front running MEV protection aspect, and then also the censorship resistant aspect, which can't be solved at the application layer.
Yeah, I would complete. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just said, just acknowledged and said, we agree.
Well, I agree too. I think it's very important for apps or users at least, or basically any combination to be able to choose if they want or need MEV, right? So some applications, of course, don't need MEV at all. Some would be, well, a very good candidate to have it built in. For example, CowSwap, of course, would be a good one. And I think Shutter does this in a fairly neat way because users can just decide, okay, for this I want to be safe, for this I don't. Of course, there are still trade-offs, right? For Shutter specifically right now, like you will always end up paying more gas because it's not really in the base layer yet, but it could be at some point. In which case it would potentially not be much more expensive to do such a MEV protected transaction. But what I'm getting at basically is that giving a choice is always good. So I think that being able to do this on the base layer or in an application or on the user's choice is always good.
Yeah, I think we also can't necessarily assume too much how things will be used. I mean, obviously, the main reason we're building is for sort of front-running protection for trades. But I think Lewis earlier you mentioned like there's some kind of shutter, like tic-tac-toe game. And I can imagine that being another application, like so if you have on-chain strategy games and that kind of thing, or like maybe even other applications we haven't thought of that might benefit from having shielded transactions.
That makes sense. Kind of the expand kind of the definition of. I mean, MEV is one thing, right? MEV is just sort of like this sub-second thing that's happening. But also, it's also pretty interesting to talk about front running more generally speaking. So I mean, yeah, and have longer term use cases of revealed schemes. So I think that's definitely also an interesting discussion. Yeah, and that's what kind of snapshot, for example, snapshot shielded voting is, right? Where it's as long the commit and reveal thing is as long as the voting period. So it's that's a whole different aspect of use case basically.
Yeah, like certain like auction mechanisms as well, I think would benefit.
Definitely, I'm very excited about this. And there was this recent paper, right, from Paradigm, I think, about shielded or shielded auctions or blind auctions. So I think that's a pretty interesting use case in itself, kind of app specific use case, and also pretty interesting, I think, in terms of sort of maybe having that be fully run inside of an MPC. So then keeping the auction results sort of fully private. That would also be an interesting discussion to have. Yeah. Should we? I mean, there's no audience. Or should we ask for audience question and then wrap it up?
Yeah, I think so. We have Antares here, so if you have any questions, feel free to post them to the chat. And so while we have discussed currently the autonomous agents and MEV strategies and such, in terms of for Gnosis Chain specifically, what might this mean in terms of, um, as Louis mentioned, there isn't much MEV on Gnosis Chain, especially with cow swap and everything. But uh, is there something else this could potentially provide to Gnosis Chain specifically with the autonomous agent research specifically?
That's a good question. I'm not really aware of the autonomous agents part, so I can't really comment on that. But I mean, in general, even if there's not much MEV right now, there's no reason for it there not to be in the future. So I think it's anyways very interesting to work towards those technologies that, as you mentioned before, could also be adapted to other chains, right? So yeah, just do the work, get this out in the wild as like a public good, let's say. That's already very good for us. And if at some point there's some more like activity and then even a chain, that would be good as well. But yeah, for the autonomous agents part, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and as we have mentioned on blog posts and other content, that already Gnosis Chain has become a blueprint for the most neutral chain, the most accessible, in terms of just providing these with the encrypted mempool. Now there's more research on MEV and everything, so these are all kind of building up for Gnosis Chain in terms of just providing more value to the users. Again,
I think it's a very important kind of first step for encrypted mempools. I mean, you can kind of consider like potentially the other designs to Shutter, but I think it's just it's the kind of first instance which can be an inspiration to encrypted mempools and other chains, particularly for Ethereum L1. And just to plug, I'm going to do a presentation at DevCon about encrypted mempools in general, and the kind of the pathway to L1, like what kind of I guess in some respects what we can learn from the Shutter design, like what other aspects could or like security assumptions would have to be changed to make it to Ethereum L1.
yeah, I
It's
think
awesome.
there's
When
also
is that?
So it's scheduled for the 13th, I think, about 10 in the morning. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys
The
there.
main event, right?
Yeah, it's on like stage 4, but I can, I'll share maybe in the Shutter channel or something more information.
That'd be awesome, man. And the friends, also in the Shutter Friends group, maybe.
Yeah, and there's
I think.
also been some research from our side on some Ethereum L1 stuff, and there's probably going to be more on that soon as well. Anything you wanted to share, Louis?
About Shutter for L1, no, nothing new there to share. I mean, yeah, we're researching, and I think the focus is really on integrating Shutter into the PBS supply chain, right? Transaction supply chain. So there's several. There's actually like an infinite amount of possibilities of where to. It's always about when to encrypt and when to decrypt, right? So there's kind of like an infinitely high number of combinations of when to encrypt and when to decrypt, and depending on what you do there, you have the possibility of essentially removing trust assumptions from various levels and various transaction supply chain intermediaries. So and we need to have that, find that exact sweet spot of where do we start, sort of, right? Because there's like 5 or 6 sort of transaction intermediaries in PBS. It's more complex than a Gnosis chain or rollups. So the research and the concept that hopefully will be publishing soon will be about the grand vision of how encrypted mempool for one, but will also be about what's the first step and what's kind of the ideal first and or maybe also second step of sort of at which stage to encrypt and at which stage to decrypt, and at which type of commitment to receive from which. I mean, ideally you would get a proposal commitment, right? But it depends on what you do, right? And so that's going to be that, but it's definitely still a ongoing research, and yeah.
Yeah, as mentioned, we'll probably be able to share more on that soon as things develop. And of course, right now, we don't have any questions from the audience. Anyone else have anything they wanted to talk about? Anything you wanted to bring up? And if not, then I am going to say thank you everyone for joining. Was a very interesting discussion, and then we are going to be hopefully you'll be able to join us again for another call. And thank you.